Today, we are diving into one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most heart-wrenching stories from the Mahabharata. It's the story of Abhimanyu, a warrior who was only 16 years old, but whose courage on the battlefield of Kurukshetra became the stuff of legend. So let's get right into his incredible epic last stand. Our story really zooms in on this one 16-year-old warrior, but it all kicks off on the 7th day of the Great War. And by this point, the Pandava army was just exhausted. You could feel this heavy sense of dread hanging in the air. I mean, can you imagine? 7 straight days of just brutal, nonstop fighting had really taken its toll. All that initial energy and zeal for the war, it had pretty much faded away, replaced by the grim, bloody reality of it all. A kind of silence had fallen over the Pandava camp, and it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of creeping fear, the fear of defeat. The way the sources describe it, it's absolutely horrifying. This wasn't just a battlefield, it was a total landscape of death. They talk about a river of corpses flowing across the land. The air was thick with the stench of death and the constant cries of the wounded. It was a complete nightmare made real. So, every day, you've got the core of a commander, the great teacher Dronacharya, coming up with new, deadly strategies. But on this day, he unleashed his masterpiece. It was a formation that looked almost simple from the outside, but was a swirling sea of death on the inside. He called it the Chakravyuh. The Chakravyuh, or the discus formation, was this brilliant and terrifying piece of military strategy. Think of it like a spinning labyrinth of soldiers that just pulls you in, deeper and deeper. And here's the crucial part. Once you were inside, there was only one known way out, and that was death. It was literally designed to be a death trap. And this just shows you how complex this thing was. It wasn't just one wall of soldiers. We're talking 7 distinct rotating layers. And each layer had different warriors with different weapons and tactics. You had infantry, then war elephants, then chariots, all of it designed to confuse, exhaust, and ultimately kill anyone who dared to step inside. So here's the situation. The Pandavas' greatest warrior, Arjuna, has been cleverly lured away to a totally different part of the battlefield. The rest of the army is just stumped. They have absolutely no answer to this death drop. But then, a young voice speaks up, the voice of Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son. Just picture this, a 16-year-old kid, fair-skinned, bright eyes, with this little smile on his lips, almost as if he saw this terrible war as just another game. He was the only warrior there who knew the secret to breaking into the Chakravyuh. But, and this is a huge but, his knowledge came with a terrible, fatal catch. So the story goes, right? Arjuna was explaining the whole formation to his pregnant wife Subhadra. Abhimanyu, listening from inside the womb, learned exactly how to break through each of the 7 gates. But just as Arjuna started to explain how to get out, Subhadra fell asleep. And so, Abhimanyu never heard the final, most crucial part. This incomplete knowledge was both his greatest weapon and, tragically, his fatal flaw. So you can imagine the scene. The Pandava army is just paralyzed by fear. They're facing certain defeat. It was a real moment of crisis. The fate of the day, maybe even the whole war, was hanging in the balance. Their king, Yudhishthir, his face pale with worry, asks this desperate question you see right here. And what's the response? A heavy, dead silence. The greatest warriors, heroes in their own right, just looked down at their feet. Their courage failed them. Nobody had an answer. And then, cutting right through all that despair, you hear Abhimanyu's young, clear voice. He steps forward. "I can go inside," he says with this incredibly calm smile. When they ask him how he'll get out, he says, "I will find the way. Or I will make a new path with my bravery." And just like that, he climbs onto his chariot and rides straight towards the enemy. And what happens next is it's one of the most incredible displays of warrior skill in the entire epic. We're talking about a single 16-year-old kid against the whole might of the Kaurava army, taking them on gate by deadly gate. First up, the arrogant prince Duryodhana. A single arrow from Abhimanyu doesn't just shatter his chariot wheel, it shatters his pride. The first gate is broken. Next, he comes up against the furious Dushasana. In a show of pure dominance, Abhimanyu's arrows slice down his flag, forcing him to retreat. the second gate falls. At the third gate stands Karna, one of the most famous warriors in the world. And yet, Abhimanyu fights with such ferocity that one of his arrows actually knocks the crown right off Karna's head. The third gate is breached. At gate number 4, the cunning strategist Shakuni tries to lay a trap, attacking from all sides like it's a game of dice. But Abhimanyu sees right through the trick, shatters his formation, and crumbles the gate. He just keeps going, storming through the 5th and 6th gates with the same incredible valor. He disarms the warrior Barisharavas and scatters Kritavarma's entire army of war elephants. The kid seemed absolutely unstoppable. Finally, he does it. He breaks through the 7th and final gate. But as he rides into the center, he realizes the trap has snapped shut. The warrior Jayadratha, using a divine boon he'd been granted, sealed the entrance right behind him, stopping the other Pandavas from following. He was completely and utterly alone. And waiting for him in the center were 7 of the Kaurava's absolute greatest warriors, legends like Dronacharya, Karna, and Duryodhana himself. A real who's who of their army. And who's facing them all? One boy. 16 years old, totally exhausted. His chariot is broken. His arrows are running low. But his spirit, that was still unbroken. What happened next was just a brutal violation of the rules of war. It was adharma, a completely unjust act. The 7 great warriors, seeing they couldn't possibly defeat him fairly one-on-one, attacked the lone, disarmed teenager all at the same time. From every side, they just rained down blows. The final fatal strike came from behind, from Dushasana's son. Abhimanyu fell, his eyes still open, and a faint smile, they say, was still on his lips. Abhimanyu died that day, but his story? His story did not. His incredible sacrifice, his fight against literally impossible odds, it turned him from a boy into an immortal legend. You know, his story is a tragedy, for sure, but it's also this amazing source of inspiration. Abhimanyu proved that courage has nothing to do with age, and that true valor isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about facing the insurmountable with every single thing you have. And for that, his single day of fighting earned him an immortal legacy. So this really leaves us with a pretty profound question to think about. Was Abhimanyu's incomplete knowledge just a fatal curse, a flaw in his destiny, or was it the very thing that created the ultimate test of his courage, allowing him to become the legend he is today?